Dunu released two new Endgame IEM recently, one being the Glacier and one being a collaboration with Precog Vision called the Mirai. And in today's video, we'll be reviewing both of these. Let's jump into it. Hey friends, welcome back to our video on Gears Audio. Today we have a double feature review in the Dunu Endgame IEMs. We'll be comparing these two at the end of the video, of course, but let's first start off with the Mirai, since you guys have been asking for this. The Mirai is a neutral or a U-shape-ish kind of tuning, if you want to call it that way. It doesn't really lean into each one hardcorely, I should say. Like, it has elements of being a neutral tuning. It also has elements of being a U-shape tuning. Now, being tuned neutral slash U-shape-ish, meaning that it focuses a lot on the bass and also focuses a lot on the treble, especially in the air region. So you get this very nice extension on both ends. And the lower mids being on the cleaner side makes the Dunu Mirai sound very open, transparent, and has this very wide, again, open kind of soundstage feeling. It's just not congested in any way, shape, or form. The heavy elements like the mid bass, lower mid range, or upper mid range and mid treble is not emphasized at all, giving you this relaxed, open, I keep saying open, but that's the only word I know. Relax, open, super airy type of sound, and it sounds absolutely wonderful. Now, there is one downside to this kind of signature, is that it lacks engagement in the lower mids that people tend to enjoy, especially people who enjoy a lot of bass slams, hits, that physicality. You're not gonna find that in Dunu Mirai. You're gonna find more of a referencey kind of signature, which, depending on your preference, you may or may not like. Now, the other con to the Dunu Mirai is the treble area. The treble, even though it's my favorite part of the Mirai because it is super smooth, has a lot of micro nuances, yet not splashy in any way at all. But what some people don't like already is that it is a bit too forward. Those people who are sensitive to treble might find a Dunu Mirai to be peaky. Now, I'm a bright lover. I love those micro details. Of course, some of my favorite IEMs are like the QDC Anole VX, the Annihilator. So when I switch to the Mirai, it feels just like home. I love just the overwhelming amount of information that the Dunu Mirai gives me. But for those of you who are sensitive to treble, you have been warned. Now let's talk about mid-range and timbre really quickly. The mid-range here is very neutral, not too little, so it's not gonna sound compressed, nor is it gonna sound shouty in any way. But for me though, it might be a little bit too safe. It doesn't pop out as well in comparison to the other elements of the song. Not to the point where I would call it recess. I just would like it to be a bit more pronounced. Now, the good thing about the mids is the timbre. Despite how much treble you have, which if you guys did not know, treble contributes a lot to how the tail end timbre sounds on, any mid-range instruments and vocals included. Despite the amount of treble that the Mirai has, the timbre on instruments and vocals still sound natural. Now, for those of you who are worried if the Mirai would be too thin sounding due to the lower mid-range being a little bit more on the flat side, I would say you don't have anything to worry about because the upper mid-range is not as much as on something more similar to a Harman style kind of tuning. So the pinna being more relaxed actually helps it not to sound thin. Next, let's talk about technical performance. Bring up my scale right here. I'm actually gonna do the Mirai and the Glacier at the same time here. I would say the Mirai has more technical chops than the Glacier by a small margin. I would say both are in the endgame territory, no doubt about that. It's just that Mirai sounds a bit more refined overall than the Glacier. Next, let's talk about the Glacier and then we'll jump into all the comparisons towards the end of the video. The Glacier is a Harman tuned IEM, similar to the Moondrop Variations and the Truthears Nova, but with a couple big differences. Number one is the bass on here is pushed up even more than on the Variations. So sub bass on the Variations, some already consider to be pretty strong. On this, it is very noticeable. Like, it rumbles quite hard, and it's something that I quite enjoy myself, and I think it's an upgrade to the Variations bass, if you will, because the bass in the Variation leaves the mid-range to sound a bit thin. On the Glacier, I don't feel thinness as much as I do on the Variation, which is something that I personally enjoy very much. Now, The one thing that I would say the variation does better than on the Glacier is the overall timbre. The Glacier, although more technical sounding than the variations, the treble sounds more tangible, has more hardness or incisiveness to it. Also, micro nuances comes across way more apparent on the Glacier than on variations as well. It sacrifices natural sounding timbre. That 5 to 6K peak that it has really shines through. Like, it adds some crispiness, but it also makes timbre feel a little bit artificial. In a perfect world, we would have the Glacier's monstrous sub bass and the technical performance that it has with the variations timbre. If we can make that happen, it would be the best tuned Harman IEM, or maybe just the best Harman IEM on the planet. But sadly, we don't have that yet today. The Glacier does a lot of things right, and I would say a straight upgrade to the variations in many ways, but the timbre just holds it back a bit from completely taking the top spot of Harman-tuned IEM. So a quick recap, the Glacier versus variations is the Glacier sounds meatier, fuller, heavier in the bass. So the overall balance of the signature, I prefer the Glacier. Micro nuances, details, it's better on the Glacier than on the variations. Both IEMs also have the signature Harman instrumental separation and spacious stage, but the variation has better, more natural sounding timbre overall. So it's a trade-off. Next is the comparison between the Mirai and the Glacier. Both are over $1,000, so the price doesn't really matter. If you're a type of people who are thinking about spending $1,000+ on IEMs already, I don't think $200-300 makes a huge difference in your decision making. It all boils down to, which sound you prefer the most, and aesthetics, cables, and all the other stuff that would convince you more so than the price, right? But yes, between these two, I would say they are not comparable. Not because I don't want to compare them, it's just they're so different in signature that they're gonna completely serve entirely different market. If you want an exciting, engaging Harman-like sound with monster sub bass and just very forward vocals, the typical Harman stuff, then you would go for the Glacier, giving the two options. But if you want something more referencey, more open, airy, spacious, then you would go for the Mirai, or more relaxed as well, you would go for the Mirai. There's simply way too many differences to just compare them head to head. It more depends on your personal preference at this point. Though, if you want just the most technical of the two, I would say the Mirai does a better job than the Glacier, slightly. Alright, that's it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I know there are a few more comparisons that I could make in this video, but I do not want it to be too long. So if you want me to compare any of these two IEMs to any other IEMs specifically, leave that in the comment section below and I'll just go and reply to you guys. But keep in mind that I haven't listened to everything, so try to only name IEMs that maybe I've listened to, or maybe that I already have on my ranking list, for example. So yes, leave those comments down below. Now back to these two IEMs, I would say I would give the Mirai a halfway green thumbs up, simply because of the treble. If the treble was reined in a little bit, it would be an easier recommendation. So yeah, halfway green thumbs up for the Mirai. Now for the Glacier, and I would say it pains me a lot to put it here because it is a very good IEM. It does many things right, but I have to give it the yellow thumb because that timbre is a huge deal at an IEM at this price point. At over $1,000, man, there's very small margin of error. And when it comes to something as big as timbre, it better be right at this price. I would say only buy it if you really don't care too much about the timbre being more on the digital side. Again, it does do a lot of things right. I would love it to be an upgrade to the variations, but alas, it's not quite there yet. Alright, that's it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. If you've listened to any of these two IEMs, let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Bye.